Hello, welcome to another episode of Deck Musings. And do I have an episode for you? Well, if you like necro decks. So this episode combines together several things under one banner, if you like. So we're going to go back a little bit. We've been going backwards and forwards anyway now, but when we started the series, we were really talking about cards from, or decks from this period, and then I went back a little bit and I was flicking through my deck deconstruction companion, and I definitely wanted to talk about necro decks. And I was trying to choose a deck to talk around and to, talk about the cards and to go down various rabbit holes. And I've ended up choosing a deck from '98. But before I show you what the deck is, let's just talk a little bit about Necro Summer. So, yeah. This is a period in Magic's history where this particular card became very predominant in the tournament scene. Now, interestingly, this is from Ice Age. Ice Age, if you look back through here, was actually released, way back here. So this is when it came into what was then like legal sets in Type 2, which went on to be referred to as Standard. And as we've seen, there was a good degree of shuffling around early on until everything got nailed down around about the time of 5th edition. But as so often happens in Magic, a problematic card will come out. Well, I'm saying the early days of Magic, a problematic card will come out, and people won't straight away realise its power. There's lots of different reasons why that happens. Sometimes it's just they misinterpret the card. They don't really get it. Another reason is just other cards which just make the card more effective, give it more utility, often take a little while to appear as a result of the sets being released. And so even though Ice Age was released well before, like a whole year before, it became a necro. I keep calling it necro. Necropotence. Necropotence got to be a problem. You can sort of see here. We have a number of necro decks. Think of necro decks coming out of Black Weenie, I suppose. But what's interesting, and for some reason I thought it was banned fairly quickly, but in fact it was reprinted in 5th edition. As you can see here, so reprinted in 5th edition, but then they just never reprinted it in a set or a main set ever again, and it came up in Iconic Masters. You can see it's actually banned in Legacy and restricted in Vintage. So what's Necropotence do? So it's 3 black, skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. Pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library face down, put that card into your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So you have a draw engine. The problem is, how do you exploit it without killing yourself before you kill the opponent? Before the opponent's life goes down, or whatever way that you can win the game. has to happen before you end up losing because you've lost, you know, all your life. So what I thought it would be interesting to do is take a look at something from actually 1998. So by then Necropotence was still legal because it had been reprinted in 5th edition and didn't disappear until 5th edition effectively rotated out. So what actually happened was there would have been Necropotence decks around from the point at which Ice Age was printed all the way through until 5th edition rotated out. So if we go through, we can probably see where that might be. There's the last period where there was 5th edition, and then we get to here and it's gone. So all through this, Necrodex would have been there. I mean, in some instances more than others. You know, we had the Necro Summer followed somewhat later by the combo Winter. So obviously there was this competition between archetypes, but again, you know, other cards that work with it, that facilitate it, that give it the relevant utility, so you don't end up, you know, dying to your own card too quickly, are also sort of coming in and out. So the other question is exactly what is a touchstone deck? Have you ever heard of this? I just wanted to pick I could have picked like a classic Necro deck, but I thought it'd be more interesting to pick a touchstone deck, even though this comes out a little bit later in 98. Now, I first came across the idea of touchstone decks in the Deck Deconstruction Companion, which I have a copy of and I'm sure I've shown on camera in various videos. So touchstone decks are the decks Wizards of the Coast R&D uses to playtest new cards against. So that's what that is. Also from here, I don't do this very often, I'm going to read a little bit about Necrodex. Let me just change this to grid view. So most Necrodex feature 4 elements: the card drawing engine, Necropotence, fuel for the engine, cards that let you gain life, and like I've just said, is most Necrodex feature 4 elements. Now sometimes these 4 elements come and go as various cards come and go within whatever format Necro is being played. Something to get rid of the Necropotence card, which is obviously you need something that blows enchantments up, blows opponent up, and something to damage your opponent. So for life gaining, Ivory Tower was universal in the early Necrodex. A player with Ivory Tower and Necropotence in play can essentially draw 3 cards per turn at no cost, simply by keeping his or her hand size at 7. Most players also add Life Drain, which serve the dual purpose of refreshing your own life and damaging your opponent. Later, Drain Life became almost universal, and many of today's Necro decks have no other life-gaining effects. And when it says today, of course, this book came out in, when was it? Yeah, 1999. So it's talking about 1999, around that time. Black has no convenient enchantment destruction, so Nevinyrral's Disc is the usual way of getting rid of your own Necropotence. So if we go up, you see destroy all artifacts, creatures and enchantments. The nice thing is it's in play, and then you just one and tap it. The disc also provides the unusual benefit of a reset button, clearing away large numbers of your opponent's creatures for the price of 1 card if your opponent overextends or simply discourages your opponent from playing many permanents. Some variants use Despotic Scepter as a less disruptive disc alternative. Others added Forbidden Ritual. This could serve much the same function as the disc, and even win the game when combined with the card advantage of Necropotence. Necro decks with no way to destroy the Necropotence receive the name Suicide Necro. Most focus on pure aggression, hitting the opponent hard and as fast as possible. Many included Karavek's Spite as a finisher. Most Necro decks stayed with the original weenie deck core, using lots of small fast creatures, often with a couple of biggies such as Singia Vampire and Ishan's Shade backing them up. Some evolved away from this, using Drain Life as a primary damage source. One popular subset, Lake Drain, used Lake of the Dead to fuel a massive Drain Life. Originally it was possible to play Lake of the Dead and use its ability before sacrificing it. The rule change requiring there comes into playability to resolve before other abilities could be used. Say that again. The rule change requiring that it comes into playability to resolve before other abilities could be used reduced the effectiveness of this deck. So that's like a general description, like an overarching description of Necro decks, but be aware what I've spoken about, not all of those things appear in this deck, because we're talking about a deck from 1998. If we looked at an earlier Necro deck, then that would be different. But I picked this deck because I just wanted people to see what a Touchstone deck looked like. And as I've said, these were decks that were used by Wizards to test cards from sets, to test decks that were built from cards from new sets. And it's interesting to see one that was put together when there was 5th edition in Standard and the whole of, Mirage, the whole of Mirage block. So we've got Mirage block cards in here, we've got 5th edition cards, we've got that's it. Notice there's no Ice Age. So we've got Visions, we've got Weatherlight. But you'll notice, because of there's no Ivory Tower in here. So what we're looking at is, we're going to be looking at when we go through the cards, is what sort of cards, if any, were in here that counteracted this pay one life in here. Or was it just the case with this particular deck at this time, it was all about not dying too quickly? So let's have a look. But I'm sure if you look online, you'll find other variants, other earlier versions of Necro decks. Like I say, this is a bit further on. But like I said, interesting to note, we still have the card because it was reprinted in 5th edition. So maybe they just thought, it's not going to be such a big problem, because as stuff rotates out, it's not like we've got to ban the card. As stuff rotates out, certain utility which makes the card more powerful is going to go away. So what do we got here? So the aforementioned Nevinyrral's disc, I think is that how you pronounce it? Nevinyrral's disc. 4 to cast, comes into play tapped, 1 tap, destroy all artifacts, creatures and enchantments. We have, and you can see here, so these start at 2 drops, which is interesting. So we've got Black Knight, 2 to cast, first strike protection from white, Knight of Stromgald, 2 to cast, protection from white. Single black, first strike until end of turn. 2 black, +1/+0 until end of turn. Notice there's no restriction on that. If you've got black mana, you can just invest it into that. Abyssal Specter. So this has got hand disruption stapled to it. 2 and 2 black, flying. If Abyssal Specter damages any player, he or she chooses and discards a card. Nekrataal, 2 and 2 black, has a removal staple to it. It's got first strike, it's a 2/1, and when it comes into play, bury target non-artifact, non-black creature. Nightmare, 5 and a black, flying. Nightmare has power and toughness, each equal to the number of swamps you control. Weakness, so this is an enchantment or an aura, so -2/-1 on a creature. And here's Necropotence, so just to refresh from earlier, 3 black to cast, skip your draw phase. Whenever you discard a card, remove that card from the game. Pay 1 life, set aside the top card of your library, put that card into your hand at the beginning of your discard phase. We have our instance, so we've got Dark Ritual, single black, gives us 3 black. Vampiric Tutor, pay 2 life, search your library for any 1 card, shuffle your library, then put that card on top of your library. Terror, 1 on the black, instant removal, bury target non-artifact, non-black creature. We've got 4 Quicksands in the deck, so 1 colourless, manage your mana pool. You can sack it, and attacking creature without flying gets -1/-2 until end of turn. So if you look at the other cards, you can sort of see that's the reverse of weakness there. We've got 21 swamps. We've got 3 drain lives, so gains X damage to... X drain life deals X damage to target creature or player. It's 1 and a black to play. Spend only black mana in this way. Gain 1 life for each 1 damage dealt, but not more than the toughness of the creature or life total of the player drain life damages. So that is, as far as I can see, the only way in the deck, within the main deck, of counteracting the life loss is through a drain life. And when I read it out, it mentioned about that. Like that's has this sort of double effect of dealing damage and then you're gaining life. Stupor, 2 and a black, target opponent discards a card at random, then chooses and discards a card. And then the sideboard, we've got another couple of weaknesses, couple of terrors, another Nekrataal, but then we've got other cards, obviously for specific matchups. Now again, remember, this is not a tournament deck. This is a deck that Wizards would use to test cards in other sets. We've got Bone Harvest, 2 and a black, put any number of target creature cards from your graveyard on top of your library, put a card at draw a card at the beginning of your next turn's upkeep. Coercion, look at the target opponent's hand, choose a card from that player's hand, that player discards that card. Gloom, 2 and a black, white spells cost an additional 3 to play, activated abilities of white enchantments cost an additional 3 to play. Infernal Tribute, 3 black, 2 sacrifice a card, play, draw a card. Nekrataal, which is more of what's in the deck. And then Morinfen, 3 and 2 black, flying, cumulative upkeep, 1 life, and it's a 5/4. So it's interesting, these decks work on lots of different levels, because depending on when these came out, so this is 98, they could be testing certain, I'm making assumptions about this actually, but you could be testing certain combinations of cards within the deck, but equally they could be used to test an archetype against another deck which is made up of new cards. So I can see this working either way as a way of testing cards. But I thought it was pretty interesting to riff around and a touchstone deck, and it being Necro as well. So let's go through the individual cards, but this time looking at cards in History of Magic that are similar. Abyssal Specter. I'm just doing this alphabetical order, and then with the sideboard cards that I haven't spoken about tacked on the end. So this has been reprinted a ton of times up until 8th edition. So you could pretty much argue it was a feature of core sets since initially being printed in Ice Age and then reprinted numerous times across the core sets. Did we ever get a gap in this? So 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th? No. And it was also in the Divine and Demonic, which I think was the first dual deck actually. I love these sort of spectres, these cards which have flying, and when they do damage they result in some sort of effect on the opponent. So let's have a look, I think, so we've got Evasion, which is flying, something called Saboteur. So let's see what falls into that category. So effects that trigger when you deal combat damage to an opponent. Okay, so this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. So what I thought it'd be interesting to do then is let's look at all the Black Saboteur creatures. So, and I'm going to go for the monocolour stuff initially and just see when that became a thing. Again, we're relying on the tags in Scryfall, so Deceased the Vermin. Nice. Oh, of course. What did we forget? Or what did I forget? The all-important is first printing. That's better. Let me just copy that to the clipboard. Okay, I thought that was wrong. So yeah, Pit Scorpion, then Abyssal Specter, then Deceased Vermin. Actually, I should also do... Let's do Flyers. So Abyssal Specter also featured in the No Hand No Land series as well. And we spoke a lot about other cards. I know when I did the series someone commented on building a deck, a more recent deck at the time, along the sort of No Hand No Land template where they included Whispering Spectre. So that's pretty interesting. See, there's a number of cards which have flyers, they're creatures, and whenever you get a successful hit, damage, in this case it's a player, something is triggered. Now the other thing, if we take out this, do we get a situation where, something being referred to as a spectre is generally consistent? So we've got 15 spectre cards here with flying. Let's just take that out. 16 So there's one here, and I suspect it's because of this, the Spectre's Shroud. Just see if that disappears when I put flying back in. Yeah. But there you go. Got a nice collection of Spectres there. And you can see deals combat damage to a player. Nice. We've looked at Black Knight, I think, in previous episodes. Certainly come up when we were looking at that. There was a black deck, but it played. It was a black prismatic deck. So probably many of you all know that this is forms a mirrored pair. So I'm curious over the years, because certainly this has come up quite a bit when I've been doing the set musings. A lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but on several occasions now we've had mirrored pairs of knights. So that would be an interesting thing to look at, because I've spoken about other interesting cards related to Black Knight in previous episodes. So let's go down a slightly different avenue. Maybe I've done this already, but let's just look at this. And the good thing is, if we get this right, we should see them side by side. I think. Yeah, look at that. Now, this seems to be the odd one out, and the reason is that this is from Plane of Chaos. You might already know this. The indication of the border is that this was a colour shifted card from that set. So you'll probably notice, if you look at this first strike protection from white, well, it's a colour shifted version of Black Knight, black into red. So that's why it's included in here. There was no mirrored pair as far as I know, and it hasn't come up in the Plane of Chaos set, but it's related to these earlier ones. So there we go, mirrored knights. And you can see here, with a lot of these, the mirroring's pretty simple. You've got like protection from each other's colours, or hexproof in some cases. But not always, as you can see. You can see here, one's got first strike, the other one's got menace. This one, your opponents can't gain life. This one, if you would gain life, you gain that much life, +1 instead. Dark Ritual, banned in Historic, banned in Oathbreaker. It's part of the boon cycle, the original one. So here it's interesting, there's a term ritual, and in Scryfall it's a tag, like an added tag that indicates spells that add mana. So yeah, this is always an interesting thing to look at. So let's have a little look at the chronological history of rituals. There's Dark Ritual, there's Sacrifice, Metamorphosis. You can see in the different colours there's different ways of doing this. Now some of these appear to the fact that you are actually performing some sort of ritual or ritual of sacrifice. That's interesting. Rain of Filth. So that's the Urza. That's a saga. Each land you control gains sacrifice this land. Add black to mana pool until end of turn. Okay. What's the most recent example of a ritual? Meeting of the Five. Where's... oh yeah, we've got Geoserve. Pyretic Ritual. Whenever I think of Dark Ritual, I often think a lot of red cards like... see, yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. Seething Song. You see this in red as well. And in some ways, I think there's probably maybe more red cards that have that Dark Ritual type template to them. With the black cards, there's a lot more, seems to me anyway, variance about where that mana's coming from. Beyond with Dark Ritual, where it's just one black and oh wow, I've got 3 black mana. Over time, you can see with black cards that usual thing of, oh yes, there's some other something else to pay beyond just mana, or as an alternative to mana. Whereas with the red ones, it's almost like either you're getting it for the mana, or it scales based on something else that you have. But, well, I suppose here's one where in red you're sacrificing any number of lands. So there's one in red where you are giving up something else. Okay, moving on. Oh, Drain Life. Yes. And you may be familiar with Consume Spirit. I'm sure we've spoken about this before, because I'm sure Drain Life has come up before in episodes. So you can see, obviously they've reworded this slightly. So the X is in, it's up here. And I think if let me just go back. If we look at Drain Life, you can see, when was it? Yeah, it wasn't really until the Beatdown box sets where they changed the mana to make it more like it is, like cards would be going forward. Also, you notice the Oracle text has been altered here as well. Drain Creature, Drain Life effect. Loads of them. Now, that particular effect deals damage to a creature or player. Yeah, that's a lot of Drain Life over time. Oh yes, Siphon Soul. Yeah, we've looked at these cards before actually, I seem to remember. So if we look at, actually that would be okay, let's flip this. So if we say, show me cards that do not have black in them. What have we got? 32. Oh yeah, Lightning Helix. Sacred Fire. 2 damage to any target. So what are we learning from this? Well, not surprisingly, it looks like the other colour that it seems to predominantly occur in is red, or red in combination with white. And well, that's the other thing. So you can see here, if you notice, outside of where it's red and white, you do get the odd mono white card, but the majority of those mono white cards, it's as a result of Extort, which is another thing. When I think of like life drain type things, then certainly Extort comes up as a way of doing that. Ah, Knight of Stromgald, another card that we've seen before in this series. So yeah, mana sinks. This is one that I often think of. So Order of the Ebon Hand, which is very similar to, and Still Moon Cavalier. And I think this did come up in an episode of No Hand, No Land, actually. And I'm trying to remember what the context was. But I'm not sure. Maybe I'm thinking of another deck I built. Because I don't know if anything there would specifically do that. Unless I was looking for a 3-drop with flying. Maybe. I'm certainly sure I've had that card come up in one Magic the Gathering episode I've done, but I've just done so many on Magic the Gathering, it could be anything. Yeah, because interesting as well, isn't it, that you've got Fire Breathing in black. So if we just look at creatures that occur on, so there's probably some spells mixed in here, I suspect, but let's just do type creature. Maybe not, I don't know how much that changed. Go away. So I've got one of those, I've got one of those fancy mice with all sorts of buttons all over it, and sometimes, yeah, press the wrong button. So that's interesting. An artifact. 5 to cast. Wow, 0/4. It was in the Masters edition, so it's reprinted online. I think I have a copy of that somewhere. So clearly it's cropping up on artifact creatures. So of the 194, let's just roughly go through this. Now, this is real rough. So because it's going to obviously include, yeah, do I want to? No, let's just leave it like that. It doesn't really matter. We'll end up double counting some things. So 15 cards which have white in them, or are mono white, or have white in them. Blue 12. Black 28. red 132, yeah, makes sense, and green 12. But again, some of those might be because they're combined up with other, yeah, so a lot of those are due to the fact we've got a second colour there. I think in all of them actually. Is that the only one? Folk of the Pines. I think all the others have a second colour in the activation cost. Yeah. And certainly if you do something like this, I mean, let's go back to, and we say, okay, which cards are where it exclusively comes from, it being like monocolour card. So we've got 7 in white, 6 in blue, 15 in black, red 112 still, so a lot of stuff there, and in green 1 probably, yeah, Folk of the Pines. But this is what I love about this episode. It's like, oh, we've got to suddenly discover this green spell with fire breathing on it, and it's nice as well. It's like a unlimited amount of fire breathing. 1 on the green, so 4 on the green for a 2/5. It was in Deck Masters. Okay, good to know. Ah, Necropotence. Yes. What have we got? What was it? Necro Impotence. Okay. Yawgmoth's Bargain. Similar to, yeah. So skip your draw step, pay 1 life, draw a card. For 4 and 2 black. Right. Deal with the devil. Skip draw life payment. Card advantage. I never heard that expression. Deal with it. Okay. Yeah, let's have a look at this. Black enchantments that come in with a major drawback that could doom you. See also leash effect. Effects which turn damage into the loss of cards or permanents. Okay. There we go. So deal with the devil. Leash effect. Right. Let's see what comes under deals with the devil. Oh, Limdall, of course, yes. Leash. Other cool thing is cards come up that I just have no recollection of. So, yeah, only appeared in limited edition. As Leash enters the battlefield, you lose life equal to your life total. What? You don't lose the game for having 0 less life. If you would gain life, draw that many cards instead. Whenever you're dealt damage, sacrifice that many non-token permanents. If you can't, you lose the game. When Leash is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you lose the game. Okay. Never been reprinted. I don't know if there's any functional reprints of that. Okay, let's have a look. Gone off with a bit of a side thing here. So you do have, yeah, leash effects. Okay, back to the original thing. So there's our Necropotence, Oath of Limdall. So yeah, deal with the devil effects. What's the most recent deal with the devil effect? Call of the Ring, 1 on a black. At the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you. Whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Market Connections, Demonic Law, and so on. Oh yeah, I remember Dark Prophecy. It's from 2014. And you've got Demonic Pact. Oh, and yes, Bitter Blossom. 1 in the back at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life, and you put 1/1 Black Fairy Rogue creature tokens with flying into play. And then you get these cards. So this, you know, if you've never looked at Cold Snap, it's worth a look. I'm not saying it's a fantastic set, but it's interesting the nods in here to, you know, because it was this made-up story about it being forgotten, a lost file, and it should have originally been part of the Ice Age block. But it's curious to see how they tried to integrate old style effects, themes, those sort of things, into clearly a newer set. So it's got cumulative upkeep in there. And yes, Phyrexian Arena is an interesting card, actually. I think my first exposure would probably be when it was printed in the Plane Chase deck, which is probably one of the early theme decks that I bought. It was It was reprinted, not pre-rented, but reprinted in Commander 2015. So we'll have that to look forward to. Crop up a few times. World Championship deck. And the other thing is, I'm sure with Necropotence generally, just thinking about the deck archetype, no doubt it'll probably come up in a future episode. Nekrataal. Nekrataal's always an interesting card, I think, because there are these cards which we're all familiar with, where they come into play and you have a removal effect on it. And I'm going to see if what I think is going to come up comes up. So I want to do it for creatures. Abo Jafar is actually an interesting way of doing that. I've seen this on at least one, like, you know, commander list for cards in white. Is it still fairly... So you can get a Chronicles version of it, which is pretty cheap still. So I've got this kicking around somewhere. But that actually does it when it's put into a graveyard rather than when it enters the battlefield. Now, for the dead, yes, you can see sort of things been around in Magic in various guises, as I said. These aren't all ETB effects. Let me try and get the oracled version of that so I can just... So it is still that. What I'm really looking for is other cards that specifically do the same sort of thing to Nekrataal. Serpent Assassin, yeah, Dark Hatchling, Bone Shredder, yeah. Angel of Despair. Shriekmore was the one I think probably was in everybody's mind. It was certainly in my mind. This is interesting because it's evoke. So for 1 and a black, you can just get it to behave like a, you know, like a non-creature spell, yeah, removal spell basically. And I'm sure we can see what particular like non-creature spells this might be similar to. Ones that destroy non-artifact, non-black creatures. In fact, there's probably one in this deck. Shieldred. Got these battle sieges as well. But you can see mostly, is it the case that either they're mono black cards or there's black in them? I don't see it. Let me reword that. Of course there would be because I had that. Let's just try it. See how much it appears in other colours. So we've got burying specific things. There's some where they have it. Again, do I want to just do it so are there any cards where the ID, so they're monocolour cards which have the same effect? There's some blue, black, white. Yeah, so it looks here with some of these it's specific things. Yeah, so it looks like it's much more conditional for non-black creatures that do it, that are monocoloured. Nevinyrral's Disc. This has always fascinated me. So we've got like a, what do you call it, a wrath effect, I think it is. But you can see it coming, or a sweeper, or whatever you want to, and whatever the correct term is for that. Vanity card. Sweeper creature destroy, sweeper artifact, sweeper intelligence. Virtual legendary. What's a virtual legendary? Discover it as a one-of-a-kind creature or object that could conceivably have been a legendary. Okay. Usually cards are in this category because they were printed before legendary existed or have a mechanical need to not be legendary. Oh. Yeah, I suppose, yeah. I can think of a few, actually. Well, that's the case. I wonder if they include, do you think they include the Nephilim? Yeah, there we go, the Nephilim's in here. That sprang to mind. Sweeper. What's the least? Artifact, enchantment, sweeper. Artifact, sweeper, 35. So do we get... Yeah, okay, so what... In the case of Nevinyrral's Disc... I don't want to think about this. So destroy. I was expecting one that just said destroy all artifacts. Just trying to think the best way to word this, because it could be in a different order on different cards. And just see if this captures what I'm trying to do. better. Okay, so we got Nevinyrral's Disc. We have Akroma's Vengeance. It's Austere Command, which is modal, so you don't get to do it all. Cleansing Nova, also modal. And Mages of the Disc, oh yeah, very clever name there. 2 white, enters tapped. So yeah, it's Nevinyrral. Nevinyrral's, I'll get it right eventually. Nevinyrral's Disc, but on a creature. Okay, oh. Right. Yeah, the penny's just dropped as well. Okay, yeah, that does destroy itself by its action. Okay, they do, yeah. So okay, it is self-destroying. So there's no need to say sacrifice this because it's going to get blown up anyway. See, we get a 2/4 for 4 there. Okay. I suspect. Oh. I didn't think, did I? Because let's just do that. Okay. Is first printing. Yes. Okay, yeah, because of course Akroma's Vengeance is from then. From that point in time. Nightmare. Yeah, these cropped up in started appearing in later sets. In those, there was those sort of weird. I don't know if you remember when core set disappeared for a while. Didn't they appear as like some weird supplemental card that were badged up? I'm trying to remember, 'cause was it the case that there wasn't really like a core set 16 or 17? Having trouble remembering. But yeah, something weird went on with this cycle of cards. I don't know if you remember them, that they had the weird symbol on them here. So you could get them, but they didn't appear in boosters, and there was no core set 17 as such. Synergies with swamps. Yeah, sounds good. Only 85. Ah, no. I've got to copy it back. There we go. Oh, look, there's Lake of the Dead. So, specifically on creatures, how does that manifest itself? 36. Now, of course, we could look in different, this is specifically swamps, but you know, we could probably find other creatures which say a number of forests in play for green cards and so on. But yeah, that's a given. Lockmere Serpent. Wasn't it a bit of a thing? Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, no, maybe I'm muddled up. I'm just wondering whether we don't really see one particular set where it happened a lot necessarily. I suppose there's this block, isn't there? These sort of two back-to-back blocks. Yeah, it's spread out pretty broadly over Magic's history. Quicksand, yeah, we have definitely talked about this card before. Sort of utility land. I think probably at some point we went down a various utility land rabbit hole and looked at, both utility lands that generate mana and ones that don't. And the idea of a utility land, well, that's been around for a long time in Magic. And yeah, I think how that discussion may have come about in the previous week was that also one early type of land in Magic history, which you don't see so much now, is utility lands that don't produce any mana. And we saw those cycles of utility lands as well from alliances. And sometimes you get whole cycles of those, and of course the utility can be slightly different. Like sometimes it's just cycling, sometimes it's turning it into a creature. If it's a cycle, and then sometimes it's just a one-off card in the set, which adds additional functionality. That's going to contribute in some way. Now the other thing is, I'm always curious to see it on cards where the color identity is 0, which essentially this is of that type. It's generating colorless mana, and there's 140 cards, still quite a lot where that's the case. So yeah, utility on cards that generate colourless mana as well is not surprisingly a thing. And if I paste in my current favourite tag to here, it's roughly, this is an interesting card, Griffin Canyon. And then it's often easy to forget, unless you're super familiar with the card. Cards like Strip Mine actually do, in addition to destroying lands, do actually generate mana, colourless mana. Wasteland. I've always liked this card, Terrain Generator. And then things like Blinkmoth Nexus as well. And I was trying to remember, wasn't there a similar card from... I'm thinking of Inkmoth's Nexus, aren't I? But I think that wasn't mono card. Oh, there we go. That's it, Inkmoth Nexus. And Dread Statue as well. Yeah, Tectonic Edge. My favourite. And then bringing it up to date, what have we got? I suppose the easy thing is I could have just reversed it there, never mind. This way we get to scroll through everything. The Seed Core, okay. Stupor, target opponent discards a card at random and chooses and discards a card. So I'm sure there's lots of discard cards alongside random discards. So we've got 36 random discard cards and 515 discard cards. There's a Abyssal Horror. That's the other thing I didn't look at when I was looking at was it Abyssal Specter, is looked at also the Abyssal cards as well when I was looking at the Spectres. Let's just look at random discard, seeing as there's slightly less. You see Black Cat. Shame there's not Torty Cat, eh? I wonder what the ability on Torty Cat would be. What do you reckon? Yeah, so not just a black thing here. Oh yeah. Mind Shatter, of course. And good old Hymn to Torak. What's that, the only decent card in Fallen Empires? Depends how you look at it, I suppose. Oh, Wand of Ith. 4 to cast, 3 tap. It's not land. Okay. Is there any other artifacts that do that? Oh, there's yeah. Had to have some basic land artwork. That's the swamps. Yeah, it's strange artwork for this. Almost has that look of it. You know, a picture that's been sent through a low-res filter. And that's the rest of the ones that weren't here. I'll always tend to do this whenever I'm looking at one piece of land artwork. Yes, interesting land artwork. I wanted to look at the land artwork from 5th edition. I don't know if I mentioned at the start of the video, but you know, one thing that's interesting about this particular Touchstone deck is the amount of 5th edition cards in it. And of course some of those were reprints. 5th edition was a big set, and some of those were reprints of earlier sets. Oh, well, in fact, sorry, what am I saying? Some. All of them would be reprints of earlier sets, but some would be reprints of more recent sets. That's what I meant to say, yeah. Because at that point all core sets were reprints. And it's also a good way of bringing together, you know, artwork as well. Basic land artwork. Oh, Terror, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of earlier. So, you know, you've got these creatures with essentially a terror type effect on them, stapled to the, yeah, removal, creature destroy, but it's stapled to a creature. Ghastly Demise, similar to. And yeah, there's a number of black cards, and there's Shriek more there. There's a number of black cards over Magic's history which do similar-ish things, costed slightly differently and worded slightly differently to have more or less exceptions, I suppose. And if you look at this in terms of just those that are instants in black and they are single colour, we get a better idea about what I'm talking about in terms of the different ways that that type of spell crops up in Magic. Let's bring it to its rightful place. There you go. So Darrow, Dark Banishing, and so on. And again, you can see, cost is slightly different. The way it does it is slightly different. But I suppose it's difficult to envisage a Magic set without that type of black removal in it, in some capacity. However, they've chosen to do that, to do the removal, because there's several different ways you can blow a creature up in black, but in other colours as well. Now at sorcery speed, what do we see? So often, you might see it teamed up with other things like this thing we've seen, Befoul, Stream of Acid, where you're teaming it up with land destruction, or things like Death Mark, where it's really specific to a certain type of creature. Assassinate, destroy a target attack creature, which is very much a thing you see in white. Other things like Bone Splinters, so where you're paying an additional cost as well, or stapling something together like Spread the Sickness with a Proliferate effect, Death Caress, and so on. Now, the other thing I wondered was it's stapled specifically to auras. Which, it can come up. Normally it's as a result of some other action in there as well. Okay. Tutors, Vampiric Tutors specifically. So we've got, and again I recognise doing this before, so Imperial Seal, Cruel Tutor, both of those better than, it's better than these two cards. In terms of the sort of colour breakdown for tutoring, if we just go through here more the, I suppose, the mono-coloured stuff. So it's funny. Colour white, ID, so mono-coloured ones. Just make sure I got this right. So there's our black cards for tutoring a card. Blue, red, And the reason why there's so few, because you're thinking, well, there's a lot more tutor, is because of the wording here for the tag. So it's tutoring, where is it if we go back, any, so when it's saying tutoring a card, search for a card, not search for a specific type of card. And if we included that, then there's a lot more tutor effects out there. And you can just actually see that with the sort of 1 CMC tutor cycle actually. And if you're curious, which I'm sure you are, like I am, here we go. So you can see that was spread out. So it's in here as a cycle, but that cycle is spread out over Mirage, Visions, and then into Urza's. Weakness, -3, -1 effect. Another card which you see in various guises. So Worse Than Dead Weight. So that's -2, -2 enchant creature for the same cost. And then there's all, you know, a whole load of cards again that do removal through -1 effect, minus effects in various combinations, both, you know, symmetrical and asymmetrical. Again, if we're just specifically thinking about black cards where we might see this, and the first time we sort of saw this, so there's our weakness card, -2, -1. But that can take, again, you know, lots of, you can have it done through an enchantment where not only can it remove it, but because it's an enchantment, it'll, you know, weaken it. For instance, like the same weakness. So even if it can't be removed, there is a downside. It makes the creature easier to kill, and also here makes its attacks less effective on there. So if we were to look on, say, a type of, say, aura, you know, you're going to see all these, I suppose, like a, you know, a shackle type effect as well. I'm sorry, now scratch that. I didn't mean to say that, because yeah, shackles is a slightly different type of thing, because you're stopping the creature from doing things. But you can see there's various cards here that do very similar things, and then you can sort of compare that to just out and out things that just are intended to blow things up. At instance, you know, we've got 101, and then at sorcery speed, slightly less, and then creatures that do, creature that does a similar thing. Yeah, and we have this artifact that is not in black. Okay, so GTA as well. Bone Harvest. Put any number of target creature cards from your graveyard on top of your library. Draw a card at the beginning of your next. Okay. So interesting reanimation effect where they're going to your library. It's also a delayed cantrip. Recursion creature. So this is played on a creature. So again, if I just look at creature cards that fall into that same type, spells that fall into that same type. Oh, of course, Cauldron Dance. Yeah. And then this was a cycle of charms with namesakes of the dragons. So what do we got? Black and green at instant speed. I'm also trying to think, was that something that comes a lot? Yeah, so things like enchantments as well. Not so many. Coercion, look at the, and you see another spell that manipulates the player's hand or the opponent's hand. You know, Thoughtseize type effect. So we've got things like duress, ostracize, extortion, blackmail, and such like. Yeah, despise. Gloom, so specifically targeting was it white spells here, but you have, you know, a whole load of cost increaser type spells in Magic. So yes, it's been kicking around since the first set. And you've got other things like Spear of Resistance. And some of these things, you know, obviously affect, you know, in this instance, you know, we're playing mono black, so it's going to be targeting a particular matchup. But there's also spells that just do it across the board, like Sphere of Resistance, just lock everything down, or you've got things like Defense Grid that during each player's turn, spells played by another player cost an additional 3. Things like Trinisphere as well. A whole load of stuff. Infernal Tutor. Sacrifice a card in play. Oh, sorry, not Infernal Tutor. Infernal Tribute. So, interesting enchantment that allows card draw. Like how many times in Magic do we see that on an enchantment? Well, by the look of things, quite a few. So let's look at it specifically in black again. Yeah, comes up quite a bit. No, there's Leash again. So we're going to see some overlap here. And we've got Greed. There. Sicken. Some Leash stuff. Interesting artwork. So there's our Infernal Tribute. Oh, this is, yeah, as a result of cycling. I should have screened out for cycling, actually. So, phi minus. Oh, cool. Probably gives us a better idea. Oh, only one less. 750 black. And then finally, Morinfen. So, yeah, it was a legend. Some interesting legends crop up in this block. I've got a number of them, so I'm definitely going to get around to featuring them on a Friday artwork video once we get up to Weatherlight, because as I said recently in a video, I need to go back to somewhere like Ice Age now and then just move forward. Oh yeah, of course, the other one I think of is Gallowbraid. So that one's got Trample and Cumulative Upkeep, 1 life, same set, same cost, same set. One's got Flying, the Morinfen. Sounds like a drug, doesn't it? Take 2 Morinfen. Lose 1 life. No, probably not such a good idea. Yeah, it's a cumulative upkeep and Trample on that one. Upkeep cost. Life payment, drawback. Let's look at life payment on creatures. In mono black. See what we see. So of course this could take lots of different forms. What about life payment on legends? That's interesting. Of Nixilis. So quite a number of legends here that life payment gives you something. I mean, obviously, specifically here, it allows you to keep the creature in play. But and I would say if we remove that and just look at monocolour creatures initially, the vast majority of them are in black. There for monocolour creatures. If we do it and take this out, and we see a lot more, including things like Lord of Trestlehorn, which predate these, but again they give you a specific thing like card draw. But it's always fun, I think, to play around with these and see how you can reduce the life loss in some way, particularly if it's in danger of making you lose the game, which obviously it will at some point. So there we have it. Hopefully you've enjoyed that rather I wouldn't say erratic, but we've covered a lot of bases here. We've talked about Necropotence, we've talked about obviously the deck, and then the individual cards and how the cards of their format and type and templating have looked in Magic over the years, but also covered about this idea of touchstone decks, where you have decks specifically created by Wizards of the Coast to test out cards in sets in various ways. That's done. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.